The claiming was where you went when no one wanted you. And as Seren stood among the discarded women of the realm, her head bowed beneath a curtain of dark hair, she prayed for invisibility. Unlike the others who primped and posed, hoping to catch even the lowest alpha's eye, she wanted nothing more than to disappear. Her sister's voice cut through the murmuring crowd. Look at her. Broken and worthless. Primrose laughed, musical and cruel. Even the rogues wouldn't take her back. The words landed like blows, but Seren didn't flinch. She'd learned long ago that flinching only encouraged them. Her father stood beside Primrose, his lip curled with familiar disgust. If no alpha claimed her tonight, he could legally sell her to the labor camps. That had always been his plan. Then the great doors exploded open. Power flooded the hall, raw and suffocating. Every wolf in the room dropped their gaze, submission forced from them by sheer dominance. Every wolf except Seren, who had no wolf left to bow. Alpha King Torin Ashvale walked in like death itself, beautiful, brutal, and utterly without mercy. Rumors said he'd killed his own father. Rumors said he'd torn apart 3 packs before his 25th year. Rumors said he was looking for a mate he would never love. He moved past daughters of high alphas without a glance, past wealthy widows and foreign princesses, and stopped directly in front of Seren. "This one," he said. The hall went silent. "Your Majesty." Her father scrambled forward. "Surely you don't mean, she's defective. Her wolf is dead. She can't even shift." Torin's silver eyes never left Seren's face. "I said this one." Neither of them understood what that choice would cost them both. The great hall of Valdros had witnessed coronations, treaties, and declarations of war. Tonight, it witnessed something far less dignified. 23 women stood on the raised platform, arranged like livestock at market. This was the claiming, an ancient tradition where unmated she-wolves who had failed to secure proper matches were offered to any alpha willing to take them. Some would become second wives. Others would become servants with polite titles. None would become anything resembling loved. Seren Vance stood at the far end of the line, as far from the torchlight as she could manage. Her gown was borrowed, ill-fitting, clearly chosen by her sister to emphasize how poorly she compared to Primrose's golden beauty. Her dark hair hung loose around her face, not styled but simply there, a curtain between herself and the cruel world. The woman beside her wept softly. She was perhaps 40 winters old, her beauty faded, her value diminished in the eyes of these wolves who measured worth in breeding years and bloodlines. Another woman stood rigid, a thick scar bisecting her face from brow to chin, wearing her damage like armor. But it was Seren who drew the most whispers. "The wolfless one," someone muttered. "Why even bring her?" "Her father's cruelty," another replied. "Wants to humiliate her one final time before selling her off." They weren't wrong. Across the hall, Seren could see her father and sister standing among the noble families. Primrose wore pale blue silk that made her golden hair shimmer. She was everything Seren was not. Beautiful, powerful, and possessed of a wolf so strong she'd shifted at the unprecedented age of 12. Their father's pride and joy, whereas Seren was his shame. "We should have drowned her as an infant," Edric Vance had said once, not even bothering to lower his voice, "before we knew what she'd become." What she'd become was this: a 22-year-old she-wolf with no wolf at all. At 16, her wolf had simply vanished, gone silent. Abandoned her entirely after that night in the forest, the night the rogues came, the night her mother died protecting her. Seren had survived, but something essential had not. A wolf without her beast was nothing, less than nothing. The auctioneer droned through names and bloodlines, his voice bored. No one of significance had come this year. A few minor alphas circled the edges of the room, assessing the offerings with cold calculation. One had already selected the pregnant woman near the front, drawn by her still fertile appearance despite her circumstances. Seren watched her father check his timepiece. He was counting down the minutes until he could legally declare her unclaimed and ship her to the northern labor camps. Perhaps he'd sell her to the mines, perhaps the textile factories where workers lost fingers to the machines. It didn't matter to him, so long as she was gone. Then the doors burst open with a sound like thunder. Every wolf in the room felt it. A pressure, immense and ancient, that pressed down on their instincts and commanded submission. Seren saw powerful alphas drop their gazes, saw proud wolves bare their throats without conscious thought. The auctioneer's voice died mid-word. She alone remained standing straight, her dead wolf unable to respond to the dominance flooding the hall. Alpha King Turin Ashvale stood in the doorway. He was tall, taller than the guards who flanked him, with shoulders broad enough to block the moonlight streaming in behind him. His hair was black as a raven's wing, cropped short in the military style. But it was his face that made women write poetry and men plan assassinations. Sharp cheekbones, a jaw that could have been carved from granite, and eyes the color of winter storms. Those eyes swept the room with absolute contempt. "Continue," he said, and his voice was the rumble of distant thunder. The auctioneer stammered, Your Majesty, we are honored by your—" I said continue. No one moved. No one breathed. Alpha Kings didn't attend claiming ceremonies. Alpha Kings had empresses and princesses fighting for their attention. Alpha Kings certainly didn't walk into a hall of rejected, broken she-wolves as if shopping for dinner. Yet here he was. Torin began walking toward the platform. The crowd parted before him like water before a blade. His footsteps echoed in the perfect silence, each one deliberate, predatory. He stopped before the first woman, the one who'd been weeping, studied her for a long moment, moved on. The scarred woman received the same treatment. His gaze lingered on her face, her defiant posture, then dismissed her with equal dispassion. Down the line he went, pausing, assessing, rejecting, until his footsteps stopped in front of Seren. She kept her head bowed, her hair falling forward, her breath trapped in her lungs. Through the dark strands she could see his boots, black leather, immaculately polished, probably worth more than her father's entire estate. The silence stretched like a blade being drawn. "This one," the Alpha King said. Seren's head snapped up before she could stop herself. His silver eyes met hers, and for a moment, she forgot how to think. This close, he wasn't just beautiful. He was devastating. There was something ancient in that gaze, something barely contained, like a storm pressed into the shape of a man. "Your Majesty." Her father's voice cracked as he shoved through the crowd. "Surely you don't mean, that one is defective. Her wolf is dead. She cannot shift, cannot breed properly, cannot—" "Did I ask for your assessment?" Torin didn't look away from Seren. "But she's worthless," Primrose added, her voice dripping with false concern. "We've tried everything to fix her. She's simply broken beyond repair." The Alpha King finally turned, and Seren saw both her father and sister flinch backward. Whatever he was projecting at them made Primrose go pale as milk. "I said I'll take her." His voice dropped to something dangerous. "Does anyone else wish to question my choice?" No one did. The carriage moved through the night like a ship through dark waters. Through the small window, Seren watched her father's estate disappear behind them, swallowed by forest and shadow. She should feel something. Relief, terror, confusion. Instead, she felt hollow, as if the part of her capable of emotion had gone dormant along with her wolf. Across from her sat a woman in servant's attire, older, with kind eyes that kept darting to Serene's face as if checking for tears. "We'll arrive at Ashvale Keep by dawn, my lady," the woman said. "I'm Margot. His Majesty assigned me to attend to your needs." My lady, as if Seren were someone worthy of the title. Why? The word escaped before she could stop it. Margot tilted her head. Why what, my lady? Why did he choose me? Seren turned from the window. There were beautiful women there. Powerful ones. Women with wolves. Why would an alpha king choose someone broken? Margot's expression flickered. Something like sympathy. Or perhaps pity. That's not for me to say, my lady, but the king's ways are his own. He doesn't explain himself to anyone. Seren fell silent, her fingers twisting in her borrowed dress. Her father hadn't even said goodbye. Primrose had laughed as the guards escorted Seren out, whispering something to their father that made him smirk. They were probably celebrating right now, finally rid of their family shame. By the time the carriage rolled through the gates of Ashvale Keep, gray dawnlight was bleeding across the sky. The castle rose from the mountainside like something grown rather than built. All dark stone and sharp angles, towers piercing the clouds above. It looked exactly like its master. Beautiful, brutal, and utterly unwelcoming. Guards escorted her through endless corridors. Unlike her father's estate, where servants had sneered and whispered, here they simply bowed, their expressions carefully neutral. No cruelty, but no warmth either. Just efficiency. They stopped before a massive door reinforced with iron. The king will see you now, a guard announced. Seren's heart hammered as she stepped inside. The room was a study, vast and shadowed despite the fire burning in the hearth. Maps covered one wall, weapons another. And standing before a window that overlooked the entire valley below was Torrin Ashvale. He didn't turn as she entered. Seren dropped into a curtsy, her legs unsteady. Your Majesty. Close the door. She obeyed. The click of the latch echoed like a death knell. For a long moment he remained motionless, a dark silhouette against the gray morning light. Then he turned, and Seren felt the full force of his attention like a physical blow. You're wondering why I chose you, he said. Not a question. Yes, Your Majesty. Because you have no wolf. He began walking toward her, his stride slow, predatory. Because you cannot bond. Because you are, as your father so eloquently stated, worthless. Each word should have wounded. Instead, Seren felt something strange, a flicker of defiance she'd thought long dead. Then why marry me at all? She asked. He stopped an arm's length away. This close she could see the faint shadows beneath his eyes, the tension in his jaw. He looked like a man who hadn't slept well in years. I need an heir, he said flatly. Political necessity. But I have no intention of taking a true mate. No intention of bonding, of sharing my life with someone who might one day control me through that bond. His silver eyes bored into hers. You offer me something no other woman can. You offer me nothing. The honesty was brutal. Somehow that made it easier to bear than her family's lies. You want a broodmare, Seren said quietly. Not a wife. I want a business arrangement. He turned away, moving to his desk. You will have chambers in the East Wing, servants to attend you, an allowance generous enough to live comfortably for the rest of your life. In exchange, you will produce heirs and stay out of my way. And the bonding ceremony? Verbal only. No marking. No physical claim. He rifled through documents, already dismissing her. I will not touch you beyond what's necessary for conception. Seren stood frozen, processing the terms. A loveless marriage. A cold bed. Children she'd have to share with a man who saw her as an inconvenience. It was still better than the labor camps. One question, Your Majesty. He paused, glancing at her with something like surprise, as if he hadn't expected her to speak. Why tell me this? Seren asked. You could have lied, pretended affection until you got what you needed. Something flickered across his face, not quite emotion, but the shadow of one. Because lies require maintenance. I have neither the time nor the patience for pretense. He set down his documents. You'll know exactly what this marriage is. No illusions, no disappointments, no hope, Seren thought. But hope had abandoned her 6 years ago in a blood-soaked forest. She'd learned to survive without it. I accept your terms, Your Majesty. His eyes narrowed slightly, as if he'd expected argument. Resistance. Tears. The ceremony is in 3 days, he said finally. Try not to embarrass me. Then he returned to his documents, and Seren understood she'd been dismissed. The morning of the contract ceremony arrived draped in fog. Seren had spent 3 days in her chambers, attended by Margot and a small staff who treated her with distant respect. No one asked about her past. No one questioned her lack of wolf. It was the most peaceful 72 hours she'd experienced since childhood. That peace shattered the moment she entered the great hall. Her father and sister stood near the entrance dressed in their finest, wearing expressions of barely concealed contempt. They'd been summoned as witnesses. Tradition demanded family presence for royal bondings. You actually went through with it. Primrose swept her gaze over Seren's simple white gown. I assumed he'd come to his senses by now, realized what he'd actually selected. Primrose? Edric's voice carried warning, but not for his youngest daughter's sake. His eyes darted to the guards stationed throughout the hall. We're guests here. Mind your tongue. Seren said nothing. She'd learned long ago that engaging only prolonged the cruelty. The hall itself was magnificent. Soaring ceilings, ancient banners, and hundreds of candles casting everything in golden light. Noble wolves from across the realm had gathered to witness their king take a mate. They whispered behind gloved hands, their curiosity sharp as blades. Is that her? The wolfless one? How desperate must he be? Perhaps she has hidden talents. In the bedchamber, you understand? Seren kept her gaze forward, walking toward the raised platform where Torin waited. He looked devastating in black formal attire, every inch the ruthless king his reputation proclaimed. His silver eyes tracked her progress down the aisle, revealing nothing. If he heard the whispers, and with Alpha hearing he certainly did, he showed no reaction. She climbed the steps to stand beside him. Up close she noticed the rigid set of his shoulders, the muscle ticking in his jaw. He wasn't as calm as he appeared. Lords and ladies of the realm, the officiator began, we gather to witness the sacred union of Alpha King Torin Ashvale and Seren Vance. The ceremony unfolded with mechanical precision. Vows were exchanged, words about honor and duty and legacy, nothing about love, nothing about partnership. Exactly as Torin had promised. Then came the moment the crowd had been waiting for. And now, the officiator intoned, the claiming. In a traditional ceremony, this was when mates would mark each other, teeth to throat, a bond sealed in blood. The crowd leaned forward, eager to witness the new queen submit to their king. Torin extended his hand, palm up. The verbal claim will suffice. A ripple of shock moved through the assembled nobles. Verbal claims were reserved for political marriages, alliances of convenience. They were considered lesser, incomplete. Some even said they were unstable, easily broken. Seren placed her hand in his. His skin was warmer than she'd expected, his grip firm but not painful. I claim you as mine, Torin said, his voice carrying through the hall. My wife, my queen, my partner in legacy. Not mate. She noticed the absence of that word. I claim you as mine, Seren responded. My husband, my king, my partner in legacy. The officiator looked between them, clearly uncertain. The marking is unnecessary. Torin's tone brooked no argument. The claim is made, the union is complete. Silence crashed over the hall. Then, because tradition demanded some physical acknowledgement, Torin lifted Seren's hand to his lips. The kiss was brief, formal, his mouth barely brushing her knuckles. but when his lips touched her skin, Seren felt something she hadn't felt in 6 years. A flutter. Deep inside her chest, in the hollow place where her wolf had once lived. She gasped before she could stop herself. Torin's eyes snapped to hers, sharp with sudden intensity. "What is it?" "Nothing." The flutter faded as quickly as it had come. "Nothing, Your Majesty." He studied her for a long moment, suspicion evident in every line of his face. Then, dismissing her reaction, he turned to address the crowd. "The ceremony is concluded. Tonight we feast." The crowd erupted into applause, whether genuine or performative, Seren couldn't tell. She stood frozen beside her new husband, her hand still tingling where his lips had touched, her mind racing. Something had stirred inside her. For the first time in 6 years, she hadn't felt entirely empty. Later, as servants prepared the great hall for feasting, Seren slipped away to a quiet balcony overlooking the mountains. She needed air, space, time to process what had just happened, or hadn't happened. "Don't get comfortable." She spun. Primrose stood in the doorway, her pretty face twisted with familiar malice. "You think you've won something?" Her sister advanced slowly. "You think becoming queen makes you better than me?" "I don't think anything," Seren said quietly. "I didn't ask for this." "No, you never ask for anything, do you? You just take." Primrose's voice cracked with old hatred. "You took Mother's attention. You took her love. And then you took her life." The words cut deep, striking wounds that had never healed. "That wasn't my fault." Serene's voice trembled. "The rogues came for you. You specifically." Primrose stepped closer. "And Mother died protecting you. Her worthless, broken, wolfless daughter." Tears burned behind Seren's eyes. "She loved us both. She would have done the same for you." "Would she? I never got the chance to find out, did I?" Primrose's smile turned vicious. "The Alpha King seems kind to you now, patient with your deficiencies. But when he realizes what you truly are, just a cursed shell of a woman, he'll discard you like the waste you've always been." "Sister," Seren whispered, hating how weak she sounded. "Don't call me that." Primrose's eyes glittered. "I have no sister. Only a ghost who refuses to finish dying." Then she turned and disappeared into the castle, leaving Seren alone with the cold mountain wind and the echo of accusations she'd spent 6 years trying to bury. The feast lasted until well past midnight. Seren sat beside Torin at the high table, accepting congratulations from nobles whose names she couldn't remember and whose sincerity she didn't trust. Her new husband spoke when required, drank sparingly, and touched her only when ceremony demanded it. A hand at her elbow, a brief brush of fingers. By the time the last guest departed, exhaustion had seeped into Seren's bones. Margot appeared at her side. "I'll escort you to your chambers, Your Majesty." Your Majesty. The title felt like borrowed clothing, ill-fitting and strange. Seren followed the older woman through corridors that seemed endless, past tapestries depicting ancient battles and Ashvale kings long dead. Finally, they stopped before carved double doors. "Your suite, Your Majesty." Margot pushed the doors open. "I've had a bath drawn and night clothes laid out. Is there anything else you require?" The chambers were magnificent. A sitting room with plush furniture, a bedroom dominated by a massive canopied bed, windows overlooking the moonlit mountains. Fire crackled in the hearth, casting dancing shadows across silk wallpaper. "No, thank you." Seren's voice came out steadier than she felt. "That will be all." Margot curtsied and withdrew. Alone, Seren moved through the rooms like a ghost. She touched the velvet curtains, the carved bedposts, the silver brush set on the vanity. Everything was beautiful. Everything was cold. She bathed quickly, the hot water doing little to ease the tension knotting her shoulders. The nightgown Margot had selected was simple, but fine, white silk that whispered against her skin. Seren had just finished braiding her damp hair when a knock echoed through the chambers. Her heart stopped. "Enter," she managed. Torrin stepped through the door, and the room seemed to shrink around him. He'd shed his formal attire for simpler clothing, dark trousers, a loose white shirt unlaced at the throat. His black hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd run his hands through it repeatedly. He looked almost human, almost approachable. Almost. "I trust your accommodations are acceptable," he said, closing the door behind him. "They're beautiful, Your Majesty." "Torrin." His jaw tightened. "When we're alone, you will call me Torrin." "Torrin," she repeated, the name strange on her tongue. He moved further into the room, stopping near the fireplace. The flames cast half his face in shadow, emphasizing the sharp angles of his features. For a long moment, he simply stood there, staring into the fire. "I will not force you," he said finally. "Despite what the contract requires, I will not take what isn't offered." Seren blinked. "You need heirs." "I need heirs conceived by a willing partner." He turned to face her, and she saw something unexpected in his expression. Not desire, but something closer to resignation. "I've done many things that would make lesser men weep with shame, but I will not add that particular sin to my ledger." The honesty struck her like a physical blow. This was not the ruthless monster the realm whispered about. This was something more complicated. "I'm willing," Seren said quietly. "I understood the terms when I accepted them." Torrin studied her for a long moment. "You don't fear me. Should I?" "Most do." Seren thought about fear. Real fear. The kind that lived in her bones since the night the rogues came. The kind that whispered she was worthless, broken, better off dead. Compared to that constant terror, this silver-eyed king seemed almost gentle. "You've shown me more respect in 3 days than my family showed me in 22 years, she said. "Whatever you are, you're not the worst thing I've survived." Something shifted in his expression. Not quite softness, but a loosening of that rigid control. "The fire," he said. "Dim it." Seren moved to comply, banking the flames until only embers glowed. Shadows swallowed the room, broken only by faint moonlight through the windows. "I prefer darkness for this," Torrin said. "Is that acceptable?" "Yes." She heard him approach rather than saw him. The floorboards creaked beneath his weight. Then his hands found her shoulders, and Seren gasped. His touch was cold. Not cool, as one might expect from someone who'd been standing near a window. Cold, like mountain streams in winter, like stone that never saw sunlight. "You're freezing," she whispered. His hands stilled. "A condition of my bloodline. Does it disturb you?" It should have. Wolves ran hot, especially alphas. Their elevated temperatures were a mark of their beast, their power. For an alpha king to feel like ice? "No," Seren said, surprising herself with the truth. "It's just unexpected." His thumbs traced slow circles against her shoulders, the cold seeping through the thin silk of her nightgown. Despite the temperature, the touch was gentle, exploratory, as if he were learning the shape of her through his fingertips. "I'm told I should apologize for it," he murmured. "But I've never understood why." "Don't apologize." Seren's voice came out breathier than intended. "It's part of you." His hand slid down her arms, leaving trails of goosebumps in their wake. When his fingers intertwined with hers, she felt the contrast acutely, her warmth against his cold, two opposites meeting in the darkness. "Turn around," he said. She obeyed. In the faint moonlight she could just make out his features, the silver gleam of his eyes, the strong line of his jaw. He was watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "May I?" His hands hovered near the ties of her nightgown. Yes. He undressed her slowly, with a patience she hadn't expected. Each movement was deliberate, careful, as if she were something precious rather than merely useful. When the silk pooled at her feet, leaving her bare in the moonlight, she fought the urge to cover herself. "Don't hide," Torrin said quietly. "Not from me." His hands mapped her skin with that same cold touch, tracing her collarbones, her ribs, the curve of her waist. Every point of contact sent shivers through her, not from discomfort, but from something else entirely. Something that stirred in the empty place inside her chest. When his lips found her throat, she made a sound she didn't recognize. "Tell me if I should stop," he murmured against her skin. "Don't stop." He lifted her as if she weighed nothing, carrying her to the bed. The sheets were cool against her back, but his body covering hers was colder still, a strange, intoxicating contrast that made her nerve endings sing. He was careful, patient, attentive in ways she hadn't imagined possible from a man who'd sworn never to love her. When discomfort flickered across her face, he paused, adjusted, waited for her signal to continue. And when pleasure finally crested, unexpected and overwhelming, she cried out against his shoulder while he held her through the aftermath. Later, as their breathing slowed, Seren noticed the fine tremor running through his body. At first, she thought it was exhaustion, but then she felt the cold radiating from his skin intensify, spreading outward like frost. "Torrin?" She touched his chest. "You're freezing." He pulled away, sitting on the edge of the bed with his back to her. In the darkness, she could see his shoulders shaking. "It will pass," he said, but his voice was strained. "Has this happened before?" A long pause. "It always happens." Seren sat up, wrapping the sheet around herself. "What do you mean? What's wrong with you?" Torrin stood abruptly, reaching for his discarded clothing. "Nothing that concerns you. I'm your wife. In name." He pulled on his shirt with jerky movements. "In name only. You'd do well to remember that." The coldness in his voice hurt more than it should have. "Torrin, get some rest." He was already at the door. "I'll send Margot in the morning." But before he left, he paused, returned to the bedside, bent down and pressed his cold lips to her forehead in a kiss so gentle it made her chest ache. "Thank you," he murmured, "for tonight." Then he was gone. Seren lay in the darkness, her body still tingling from his touch, her mind racing with questions. Something was wrong with the Alpha King. Something he was hiding. Something connected to that unnatural cold and the tremors that had racked his body. She should leave it alone. Should remember her place. Remember the terms of their arrangement. But as sleep finally claimed her, one thought rose above the others. She wanted to know his secrets almost as much as she feared him discovering hers. 3 weeks passed. Seren had expected Torrin to visit once, perhaps twice more, the minimum required for conception. Instead, he appeared at her door nearly every night. He never stayed until morning, never ate meals with her, or accompanied her through the castle. But in the darkness of her chambers, behind closed doors, he came to her with a hunger that belied his cold exterior. And each time, she noticed more. The way his hands trembled when he touched her, as if holding back some immense force. The way the cold intensified after their encounters, spreading across his skin like frost on glass. The way he sometimes paused mid-motion, his eyes going distant, his breath catching in a way that had nothing to do with pleasure. Something was consuming him from within. Serene began taking her morning walks through the castle gardens, timing them with the guards' shift changes so she might observe the household rhythms. She visited the library, reading histories of the Ashvale bloodline. She asked careful questions of servants and guards, piecing together fragments of information. What she learned unsettled her. The Ashvale Alphas had always been powerful, extraordinarily so. But that power came with a price. They ran cold where other alphas ran hot. They lived shorter lives than their peers. And they never, not in 12 generations, had true mates. The last king who tried to bond, an elderly servant whispered when Seren pressed, died within a fortnight of the marking. His queen barely survived the severing. Died from what? Seren asked. The servant's face paled. We don't speak of it, Your Majesty. It's not our place. That night, when Torin came to her chambers, Seren was waiting by the fire. You're not in bed, he observed, closing the door behind him. We need to talk. His expression shuddered. I didn't come here for conversation. Then why do you keep coming? The question escaped before she could stop it. Every night, Torin. Far more than necessary for conception. Why? He went still, a predator assessing a threat. Does my presence displease you? That's not what I asked. For a long moment, he simply looked at her. In the firelight, she could see the shadows beneath his eyes, deeper than they'd been 3 weeks ago. The pallor of his skin, more pronounced, the slight tremor in his hands that he couldn't quite hide. You should be grateful I'm not repulsed by my duty, he said finally. Is that what this is? Duty? What else would it be? Seren stood, crossing the distance between them. He watched her approach with wary eyes, his body tensing as if preparing for battle. Your hands shake when you touch me, she said softly. Your temperature drops further each night. You leave before dawn because you don't want me to see how badly the cold affects you. She stopped an arm's length away. Something is wrong, Torin. Something you're hiding. His jaw clenched. You're overstepping. Probably. She reached out, taking his cold hand in both of hers. But I've spent 6 years being ignored, dismissed, and treated as if I didn't exist. If I'm going to be your wife, even in name only, I deserve to know what's killing you. The word hung between them. Killing. Torin's mask cracked just for a moment. She saw the exhaustion beneath the cold exterior, the weight of secrets too heavy to carry alone. You have enough burdens, he said quietly. You don't need mine. Maybe I want them. His eyes searched her face, looking for deception and finding none. Why would you want that? Because I think I'm falling for you, she thought, but didn't say. Because your coldness feels like safety and your touch feels like home. Because when you're inside me, I forget that I'm broken. Because loneliness is easier to bear when shared, she said instead. Something shifted in his expression. He lifted his free hand to her face, his cold palm cupping her cheek with devastating gentleness. You're nothing like I expected, he murmured. Neither are you. They stood like that for a long moment, warmth and cold pressed together, two damaged people finding something unexpected in the space between heartbeats. Then Torin kissed her. Not the perfunctory kisses of their encounters. Those had always been brief, almost clinical. This was different. This was slow and deep and achingly tender, his cold lips moving against hers as if memorizing their shape. When he finally pulled back, his eyes were brighter than she'd ever seen them. I chose you because you have no wolf, he said quietly. Because a broken bond can't drain what isn't there. Because I thought... He stopped, swallowed. I thought I could bed you without consequence. Use you for heirs without ever feeling anything at all. Seren's heart stuttered. And now? He laughed, the sound hollow and pained. Now I can't stop thinking about you. Your warmth, your voice, the way you look at me as if I'm something other than a monster. His hand tightened on her face. I chose you to feel nothing. Instead, I feel everything. Is that so terrible? The look he gave her was devastating, equal parts longing and despair. Yes, he whispered. It is. He didn't explain further, but that night, He stayed later than usual, holding her against his cold chest while she listened to his heartbeat, steady and strong despite whatever was destroying him. She fell asleep in his arms. When she woke, he was gone. 2 months after the wedding, Seren called for the court healer. The woman examined her with efficient hands, asked pointed questions, and finally sat back with a knowing expression. "Congratulations, Your Majesty. You're with child." The words landed like stones in still water, sending ripples through everything Seren thought she understood. Pregnant. She was pregnant. The goal of their arrangement fulfilled. Heirs secured. Or the beginning of them, at least. "How far along?" Seren asked, her voice distant. 6 weeks, perhaps 7. Early yet, but the signs are clear. The healer began packing her supplies. "I'll inform His Majesty immediately." "No." The word came out sharper than intended. "I'll tell him myself. Tonight." The healer bowed and departed. Seren spent the rest of the day in a daze. She walked the gardens despite the autumn chill, her hand drifting unconsciously to her still flat stomach. A child. Torin's child. Growing inside her right now. She should feel relieved. The pregnancy meant security. No more fear of being cast aside as useless. It meant she'd fulfilled her purpose, earned her place in this cold castle. Instead, she felt terror. Because Torin had been clear. Heirs were the goal. Once that goal was achieved, their arrangement would change. He'd have no reason to keep visiting her chambers, no reason to hold her in the darkness, to kiss her with increasing tenderness, to share those rare moments when his mask slipped and she glimpsed the man beneath the king. He'll stop coming, she thought, now that he has what he needs. The fear of that loss surprised her with its intensity. Somewhere in the past 2 months, this cold arrangement had become something else entirely, something she wasn't ready to name. That night, Torin arrived earlier than usual. He found her sitting by the fire, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "You asked to see me," he said, closing the door. "Is something wrong?" "I'm pregnant." The words fell into silence. Torin went completely still. His silver eyes fixed on her face, then dropped to her stomach, then rose again. Something moved behind his expression, emotion she couldn't quite read. "You're certain?" His voice was strange, strained. "The healer confirmed it this morning." He crossed the room in 3 long strides, dropping to his knees before her chair. His cold hands found her stomach, pressing gently against the fabric of her dress. "A child," he breathed. "My child." "Yes." When he looked up at her, she saw something she'd never seen in his face before. Joy. Pure, unguarded joy that stripped away every mask he wore. "Thank you." He pressed his forehead to her stomach, his shoulders shaking. "Seren, thank you." Her fingers threaded through his dark hair before she could stop herself. "You're happy? Happy?" He laughed, the sound raw and real. "I didn't think I'd ever—" He stopped, composed himself. "I thought I'd have to wait years, try repeatedly, risk—" Again he stopped. "Risk what?" Seren wondered. Torin rose, pulling her up with him. His arms wrapped around her, pressing her against his cold chest with desperate strength. "You've given me everything," he murmured into her hair. "Everything I needed." But even as warmth bloomed in her chest, fear coiled beneath it. He had what he needed now. The arrangement was fulfilled. "What happens now?" she asked, hating the tremor in her voice. "With us?" Torin pulled back, frowning. "What do you mean?" "The contract said heirs. Now there will be an heir." She forced herself to meet his eyes. "You don't need to keep visiting me." Understanding dawned in his expression. "You think I'll stop coming, won't you?" His hands cupped her face, tilting it up toward his. In the firelight, his silver eyes burned with an intensity that stole her breath. I should, he said quietly. It would be safer, smarter. Every night I spend with you, I feel. He stopped, his jaw tightening. I feel more than I should, more than I ever expected, more than I can afford. Then why don't you stop? Because I can't. The admission seemed to tear itself from him. Because you've become essential to me. Because when I'm not with you, I'm counting the hours until I can be. Serene's heart pounded. Torin. I chose you to feel nothing, he repeated, echoing his words from weeks ago. Instead, I feel everything. His thumb traced her cheekbone. I care for you, Seren. More than care. He stopped abruptly, his face twisting with pain. Torin? His hands dropped from her face, one pressed against his chest, fingers clawing at his shirt as if trying to reach his heart beneath. What's happening? Seren grabbed his arms as he swayed. Torin, talk to me. No, he gasped, his skin going white. No, not now. Ice spread across his flesh. She could see it forming beneath the surface, pale tendrils snaking up his throat, across his jaw. His silver eyes went wide with agony. I can't. His voice broke. I shouldn't have. He collapsed. Seren screamed his name, catching him before he hit the floor. His body was freezing in her arms, colder than she'd ever felt it, cold as death itself. Help! She screamed toward the door. Someone help me! The king is dying! Guards burst through the door. Servants flooded the room. Chaos erupted around her. But Seren barely noticed. She was staring at Torin's face, watching frost spread across his features, watching his lips turn blue and his breathing go shallow. He'd been about to say something. Something he shouldn't have said. Something that had triggered this. I care for you, he'd said. More than care. I love. He'd been about to say love, and it was killing him. Help me get him to the bed, Seren commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. Two guards lifted Torin's frozen body, laying him on the sheets where they had held each other just hours before. His skin was white as snow, frost crystallizing along his cheekbones, his lips blue as a winter sky. Send for the healers, one guard barked. All of them. Seren pressed her hand to Torin's chest. Beneath her palm, his heart beat slowly, struggling against whatever was consuming him from within. Stay with me, she whispered. Please, Torin, stay with me. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused and glazed with pain. Shouldn't have, he gasped, tried to tell you, shouldn't have let myself. Don't speak. Save your strength. No. His cold hand found hers, gripping with surprising strength. You need to know before it's too late. The healers burst through the door, but Torin waved them back with a trembling hand, his silver eyes fixed on Seren's face with devastating intensity. There's a curse, he said, each word costing him visible effort. On my bloodline, placed centuries ago by a powerful witch who wanted to ensure the Ashvale kings could never be controlled through love. Seren's blood went cold. What kind of curse? If an Ashvale king falls in love, truly, deeply, completely, his heart freezes. Torin laughed bitterly, the sound dissolving into a cough. Our ancestor thought he was protecting the bloodline. Instead, he doomed us to cold, loveless lives. Every king since has either avoided love entirely or died trying to feel it. That's why you chose me, Seren breathed. Someone you couldn't bond with. Someone you thought you'd never love. His grip tightened. I chose you because you were broken. Because I thought two broken things couldn't possibly fit together. His eyes glistened. I was so wrong. Tears spilled down Seren's cheeks. Then stop loving me. If that's what's killing you, then stop. Hate me. Despise me. I don't care. Just live. I can't. The words came out as a sob. I've tried. Every night I told myself it was just desire, just physical need. But then I'd see your face, Hear your voice. Feel your warmth against my cold, and I'd fall deeper. He lifted her hand to his frozen lips. You're the first warmth I've ever known. How could I not love you? There has to be a way to break the curse, Seren insisted. Every curse has a weakness. Only one. Torin's eyes began to close. A soulbinder. Someone who can manipulate life force itself. But they were hunted to extinction generations ago. The last one died before my grandfather was born. Soulbinder. The word struck something deep in Serene's memory. A voice from childhood. Her mother's voice. Whispering secrets in the dark. You have a gift, little one. A warmth inside you that can heal what's broken. But you must never tell anyone. Promise me. Never tell. What if I could find one? Seren asked desperately. A soulbinder? There are none left. Torin's breathing grew shallow. I've searched. Spent years searching. It's hopeless. Nothing is hopeless. His eyes opened one final time, fixing on her face with heartbreaking tenderness. You were worth it, he whispered, feeling love, even briefly, even if it kills me. You were worth it. Don't say goodbye. Seren was sobbing now. Don't you dare? Take care of our child. His hand fell from hers. Tell them. Their father loved their mother. More than anything in any world. His eyes closed. The frost spread faster, coating his entire body in a thin layer of ice. Torin! The head healer pulled Seren back. Your Majesty, there's nothing we can do. The curse is beyond our abilities. He'll be dead within the week. No. Seren wrenched free. I won't accept that. She stared down at her dying husband, at the man who'd chosen her because he thought she was broken, who'd fallen in love with her anyway, who was paying the ultimate price for daring to feel. A soulbinder. Someone who could manipulate life force. Her mother's voice echoed again. A warmth inside you that can heal what's broken. And suddenly, Seren understood. She knew exactly what she had to do. The Vance estate looked smaller than Seren remembered. Or perhaps she had simply grown larger. Not in body, but in spirit. The broken girl who'd left this place in disgrace was not the woman who returned as queen. 2 royal guards flanked her as she dismounted. Her father's servants scattered at the sight of the crown insignia, running to warn their master of the unexpected arrival. Seren? Primrose appeared on the front steps, her face a mask of confusion. What are you doing here? I need to speak with father. Seren's voice held steel she hadn't known she possessed. Immediately. He'll receive his queen. Seren climbed the steps, not slowing. Or I'll have my guards drag him from whatever hole he's hiding in. Something in Seren's expression made Primrose step aside. She found her father in his study, exactly where she'd expected, hunched over ledgers, counting coins, calculating his worth in gold and silver. He looked up as she entered, and his lip curled with familiar disgust. The wolfless queen returns. He didn't bother to stand. Come to show off your borrowed crown? I came for answers. Seren stopped before his desk, her hands clasped to hide their trembling. About the night Mother died. Edric's expression flickered, just for a moment, before settling back into contempt. Your mother died because rogues attacked. Because she was foolish enough to protect you instead of running. That's the story you told. Seren leaned forward, planting her hands on his desk. But it's not the truth, is it, Father? I don't know what you're implying. I'm implying that you've been lying for 6 years, about the attack, about Mother, about me. She straightened. I'm implying that you bound my wolf on purpose, that you've kept me weak and broken deliberately. Primrose gasped from the doorway. Seren, what are you talking about? Ask him. Serene's eyes never left her father's face. Ask him why a pack of rogues would target a woman and child in the middle of protected territory. Ask him why he happened to be conveniently away that night. Ask him why, when I survived, he bound my wolf within a week of the attack. She's raving, Edric snapped. Clearly pregnancy has addled her. Mother was a soulbinder. The words fell like stones. She told me once, when I was young, she made me promise never to tell anyone. The color drained from her father's face. What? Primrose's voice was barely a whisper. Mother had magic? Soulbinder magic, Seren confirmed. The ability to heal, to manipulate life force itself. An ability that passes through bloodlines. An ability I inherited from her. She turned back to Edric. That's why you bound me. Not because my wolf was damaged, but because you were afraid my true power would manifest. Afraid I'd become what Mother was. Edric rose slowly, his chair scraping against the floor. You don't know what you're talking about. Then explain. Explain why you've hated me since birth. Explain why you blamed me for Mother's death when I was only a child. Explain why you've spent years trying to destroy me. Because you're an abomination. The words exploded from him, decades of hatred finally unleashed. Both of you. Your mother with her cursed blood, and you, her perfect copy. Primrose stumbled backward. Father. I never wanted to marry her. Edric snarled. My father arranged it, for political gain, and then I discovered what she was. A soulbinder, a witch, a monster hiding behind a pretty face. His hands clenched into fists. She refused to let me bind her powers, said they were a gift, not a curse. So I waited. I planned. And when you showed the first signs of her taint. You hired the rogues, Seren breathed. You hired them to kill us both. Edric's silence was confirmation enough. Primrose made a choking sound. You murdered our mother? I cleansed our bloodline, Edric roared. Or I tried to. That foolish woman died protecting her precious daughter, and somehow you survived. He pointed at Seren with a shaking finger. I bound your powers immediately, hoping it would be enough. Hoping the taint would stay buried. But you kept manifesting other signs. Your wolf's strange behavior. Your mother's warmth. Her way of knowing things. So you told everyone my wolf died, Seren said quietly. Made me believe I was broken. Raised me in shame so I'd never question, never discover what I truly am. You are broken, Edric spat. I made sure of it. The confession hung in the air, poisonous and damning. Then Primrose moved. Her fist connected with their father's jaw with a crack that echoed through the study. Edric stumbled backward, crashing into his bookshelf, ledgers scattering across the floor. You monster! Primrose was crying, her hand shaking. You killed our mother. You tortured our sister. You let me hate her for something she never did. Primrose, Edric started. Don't. Primrose's voice broke. Don't say another word. She turned to Seren, and for the first time in their lives, there was no hatred in her eyes. Only horror. Only grief. Only the beginning of understanding. The binding seal, Seren said, her voice steady despite the chaos in her heart. Where does he keep it? His safe. Primrose was already moving. Behind the portrait. Primrose, don't you dare! Edric lunged forward, but the royal guards caught him, forcing him to his knees. Primrose tore the portrait from the wall, revealing a small iron safe. Her hands shook as she worked the combination. Birthday dates, Seren realized, watching her sister's fingers move. Mother's birthday. The safe opened. Inside lay a small carved box, covered in symbols that made Serene's skin prickle with recognition. The binding seal, Primrose whispered, pressing it into Seren's hands. Can you really use it to save the king? Seren closed her fingers around the box. I'm going to try. I'm sorry. Tears streamed down Primrose's face. For everything. For believing him. For hating you. For... Later. Seren surprised herself by squeezing her sister's hand. We'll talk after. She turned to the guards. Arrest Lord Edric Vance for conspiracy to murder, treason against a soulbinder bloodline, and crimes against the crown. You can't do this, Edric screamed as they dragged him away. I'm your father. Seren watched him go, feeling nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, just emptiness where hatred had lived for so long. Go, Primrose urged. Save your king. I'll testify to everything. I'll make this right. Seren nodded once, then ran for her horse. The sun was setting as she rode toward Ashvale Keep, the binding seal clutched against her heart. Somewhere inside those dark walls, Torrin was dying, but not for long. Seren burst into Torrin's chambers to find him encased in ice. The frost had spread from his body to the bed, to the floor, creeping up the walls like living crystal. His skin was translucent, his lips colorless, his chest barely moving with each shallow breath. The healers had retreated to the edges of the room, their faces grim with defeat. Everyone out, Seren commanded. Your Majesty, we can't leave you alone with... Out! They fled. Seren approached the frozen bed, her heart hammering against her ribs. She could feel something stirring inside her, that warmth her mother had spoken of, the gift she'd carried unknowingly all these years. She opened the binding box. Inside lay a small crystal, pulsing with dark light. The seal that had imprisoned her true nature for 6 years. Seren didn't hesitate. She crushed it in her fist. Power erupted through her like sunlight breaking through clouds. Heat flooded her veins, not painful, but glorious. Warmth she'd never known she was missing rushed back into the hollow places inside her. And deeper still, something stirred. Something that had been sleeping for 6 long years. Her wolf. It rose inside her with a howl of joy, finally freed from its cage. Not dead. Never dead. Just bound, suppressed, and waiting for the moment Seren was ready to claim it. But the wolf wasn't alone. Woven through its essence was something else. The soulbinder gift. Pulsing gold and warm, ready to be wielded. Seren climbed onto the frozen bed, straddling Torrin's ice-covered body. The cold should have been unbearable, but her newly awakened warmth pushed back against it, creating a barrier between frost and flesh. I'm going to save you, she whispered, even if it kills me. She placed her hands on his frozen chest and let the warmth flow. The sensation was indescribable, like pouring liquid sunshine into a glacier. She could feel Torrin's life force, dim and flickering, trapped beneath layers of cursed ice. She could feel the curse itself, ancient and malevolent, a cage built around his heart to ensure he would never truly live. She pushed harder. The ice began to melt. Water dripped from his skin, soaking the sheets. The frost on the walls retreated. The temperature in the room climbed, but the curse pushed back. It fought her with everything it had, centuries of dark magic battling against her newborn power. Seren screamed as pain lanced through her, the curse trying to freeze her too, trying to claim another victim. She thought of her mother, who'd died protecting her. She thought of Torrin, who'd fallen in love despite knowing it would kill him. She thought of the child growing inside her, who deserved to know both parents. And she burned brighter. The warmth exploded outward in a wave of golden light. The curse shrieked. She could actually hear it screaming, as her soulbinder magic tore through its foundations. Then, with a sound like breaking glass, it shattered. Torrin gasped, his back arching off the bed. Color flooded his face. His eyes flew open, silver and clear and alive. Seren? His voice was hoarse, wondering. How did you... I saved you. She collapsed against his chest, laughing and crying simultaneously. You stubborn, beautiful fool. I saved you. His arms wrapped around her. Warm arms, she realized with shock. For the first time, his skin wasn't cold against hers. The curse, he breathed. It's gone. I can feel it. It's actually gone. Gone forever, Seren confirmed. For you. For our child. For all the Ashvales who come after. Torin pulled back to look at her, his warm hands framing her face. You're a soulbinder. Apparently, that's supposed to be impossible. And yet, she smiled through her tears. Here I am. He kissed her then, properly, deeply, without the shadow of death hanging between them. When they finally broke apart, they were both trembling. I love you, Torin said. I can finally say it without dying. I love you, Seren. I love you. I love you too. 6 months later, the realm had transformed beyond recognition. Seren stood in the training courtyard of Ashvale Keep, golden light dancing between her fingers. Her soulbinder abilities had grown stronger with practice, guided by ancient texts Torin had unearthed from the castle archives. She could heal wounds, sense life force, and, most importantly, ensure no Ashvale would ever suffer under that curse again. Your form is improving, her instructor noted, though your footwork still needs practice. Seren laughed, letting the light fade. I'll work on it. Your Majesty. A servant approached with a bow. Your sister has arrived. Primrose waited in the great hall, dressed in traveling clothes, her golden hair windswept from the road. She'd taken over their father's seat on the regional council after his imprisonment, working to repair the damage their family had caused. Sister. Primrose smiled, a genuine smile, still hesitant but growing warmer with each visit. You look well. I feel well. Seren embraced her, marveling at how natural it felt. How was the journey? Long, but worthwhile. The council has formally recognized soulbinders as protected under realm law. No more hunting, no more persecution. Your kind can practice openly now. Your kind. The words would have stung once. Now they felt like belonging. And father? Seren asked quietly. Primrose's expression dimmed. Still in the tower cells, still refusing to acknowledge what he did. She shook her head. I visit sometimes, try to understand how he became that. I never find answers. Some people choose darkness, Seren said softly. It's not our job to illuminate them. They walked together through the castle, past servants who bowed with genuine respect, past guards who nodded at their queen with loyalty that had nothing to do with fear. The nursery is complete, Seren said, leading Primrose to a sun-filled room decorated in soft greens and golds. Torin insisted on designing it himself, said he wanted our daughter to wake up to warmth every morning. Daughter? Primrose's eyes widened. You know it's a girl. Seren placed a hand on her rounded belly, feeling the small life fluttering within. Soulbinder gift. I can sense her life force, strong and bright and wonderful. Have you chosen a name? Linnea. Seren smiled. It means warmth in the old tongue. Perfect. Primrose touched her sister's belly gently. Hello, little Linnea. Your aunt is going to spoil you terribly. They laughed together, a sound that would have seemed impossible a year ago. That evening, Seren found Torin in the gardens, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and rose. He turned at her approach, his face breaking into the smile he reserved only for her. There you are. He pulled her into his arms, her back against his chest, his hands settling over her stomach. How was your sister's visit? Healing. Seren leaned into his warmth. Real warmth now, the warmth of a man no longer cursed. Slowly, but healing. Like us, she agreed. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the day end and the stars emerge. Torin's thumb traced gentle circles over her belly, feeling their daughter kick against his palm. I selected you believing you were damaged beyond saving, he murmured. I thought I could never love something so shattered. And instead? Instead, I discovered that shattered things can still be beautiful, that shattered things can save lives. He pressed a kiss to her hair. That sometimes the most damaged among us carry the greatest light. Saren turned in his arms, cupping his face in her hands. "We weren't damaged," she said softly. "We were just waiting for someone who could see past the cracks to what lay beneath." What did lie beneath? She kissed him, soft and sweet, and full of promise. "Everything," she whispered. "Everything we were always meant to be." Behind them, the castle glowed with candlelight. Around them, the kingdom prospered under the rule of a king who finally knew love and a queen whose warmth had saved them all. And in Seren's belly, their daughter grew. The first Ashvale in 12 generations who would never know the cold. Some curses end in tragedy. This one ended in warmth.